about some of these guys down here saw they're about to move it.
Okay.
You have that framed as a 3-shot?
Yeah. Just.
Yeah. Let's see if this goes. Okay. Right
here? Anywhere there you want. It's fine. Wherever's comfortable for you.
Okay. Yeah. How's that?
Perfect.
Yeah, it's pretty slow cutting, fortunately.
Okay, could you just for sound check give me your name?
Okay. My name's Will Sturges, and I'm an adjunct assistant professor in the Department of Architecture. I'm a licensed architect, and I teach one of the teachers of design build in our School of Architecture and Light Arts. So the basic idea with design build is that the students participate in the design and construction on a real project. And this is the 5th consecutive project we've done in the community for the past 5 years. That overall project was started by several people about 15-20 years ago, one of whom was Chris Alexander. They did this brick foundry back there. Have you been back there? I've seen that. That was one of the first projects. And then they did some other little things. Some of them have been torn out. And then about 5 years ago, the department kind of recreated design build with that pavilion right down this pathway here. And it's basically embarked on increasingly ambitious projects over the years. Whereas this is really the most ambitious project that we've done.
What exactly is this?
This is right here. What you see is the pedestrian bridge, and then the north landing, the south landing. The project also includes a lot of work on the south bank, which had been really degraded by ducks, by people feeding the ducks, things like that. So the idea was to create a place for people to get down to the water, to educate people about what is the best kind of food to feed the ducks, and to restore some of the stream bank. You can see those reed rolls that have gone in, so we're actually reclaiming about 5 feet of stream bank with these just somewhat vegetative technology, so it's not just like throwing in boards and lumber or concrete and stuff, but actually putting in things that are going to take root in the the mesh structure that you see there decomposes over time, so it basically just becomes back into a bank. So that's really a big part of the project. You can see the basalt wall over there. And the idea with that is that the architecture and the landscape architecture really are both necessary in order to effectively regenerate habitat and spaces for people too. So, but really the deal with this bridge that really kind of got the project going is that there really wasn't good pedestrian circulation out here at all. They'd done some work at this intersection at Franklin Boulevard a year or so ago and brought in a sidewalk and just kind of stopped it by the other side of that orange shed. Hey, thanks, Mark. And so it really actually made the problem a little bit worse because pedestrians were set up to think that they'd be okay just following the sidewalk around, but then it kind of just stopped. So then people would have to get out in the road and cross this bridge, and they would generally cross the bridge going at a really long angle, so they're in the road for a long time. All the physical plant vehicles are driving back and forth, and the university recognized it as a real hazard. They figured, one lawsuit would, be an easy couple of $100,000. So they were able to give us, originally they were thinking $50,000 to do the whole thing. And the budget's increased probably about 1.5 times that, a little bit less than that. But they're still getting a really good deal because they're getting professional design services through me and my students volunteering, and then reasonably professional construction services, again volunteered by us. The department, through grants that we've written and things like that, has purchased most of these tools, and so the physical plant's reimbursing us for some of the things like blades and stuff that we go through. But generally all of the work is being done by students with a couple of exceptions because this is a pretty critical project. It's not like a little pavilion or something. There's some things that we've had to bring in certified welders, say, and things like that. But most of the design is based on the idea of maximizing the work that we could do so that we have bolted connections as opposed to welded connections wherever we can, for example.
Can you explain the process? What you do here?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, initially we were approached by the physical plant. They asked us if we'd be willing to do this job, and we're like, yeah, that sounds great. So what we did was early in the winter quarter, we just kind of everyone involved at the higher up level met and talked about what would be going on. And then in the spring quarter, we had a seminar where many of these students took that class, and in that course, we basically addressed what the issues were, established what the program was, and began kicking out design ideas. The idea was basically to design the bridge so that we could go ahead and submit it for building permit and then make more decisions during the summer. And so the process then involved really looking at where to put the bridge. And a lot of the students wanted to put it where it would not be attached to this existing bridge, but come from between these two trees on this side and go across basically on axis with that orange roll across there. Because that's really straight in line with what the pedestrian path would want. There are a couple of problems with that. It created kind of a weird space between the two structures. And also the city planners would have required that we get a conditional use permit for that. Whereas if we attached an existing structure, it's like modifying that, whereas if we build a whole new thing, it's more of a problem in itself. And so that was a real determinant from regulatory authorities that the students rarely have to engage or respect and acknowledge in the studio. So, and it really upset a lot of the students. They really liked the idea of their own bridge completely going right there. I actually was pleased that it came up against this because it made it a little bit trickier and more complicated, and it used less materials but more ingenuity to work it out. And so that was an example of the students having to confront the reality through the construction, even before we really got into construction. And then there have been a lot of, as the process has continued, we had to make a lot of little design decisions and do drawings and work things out in order to get it built. I'll give you a call if we need that lumber picked up.
Yeah, I talked to him. He said it's not ready yet. He wants to let it dry.
Okay.
He's going to get back to it.
Okay, did he have any idea how long it was going to need to dry?
He's going to check it today, he said, so we'll get back to it probably today or tomorrow.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Dan.
Yeah.
So yeah, little things like getting the materials and stuff affects the design to a pretty
do the
great
students
degree.
participate in the materials and laying out how you go about getting materials, how you do all this stuff?
They do a lot of that. In the spring seminar, once we got the design pretty much figured out, we had students sourcing out different materials, like the wood that's used in that truss. It's a cedar glulam, and it's really only available from one supplier. It's Alaskan yellow cedar. It's a true cedar, not like the western red cedar, which is actually a juniper. So the students were looking at where we can get the type of lumber that would be able to be used in an exposed location like this. They were calling suppliers of bolts and washers and things like that. They were calling people that rent out the augers that we were planning on using to drill the supports for the concrete piers for in here. And those people are saying, well, we don't rent something that goes down more than 5 feet. So we were having to make design decisions based on what kinds of equipment we were going to have available to us. And a lot of those kinds of things in terms of actually placing the orders and juggling what's going to get out here when and stuff like that are things that I'm doing, but trying to pass it off to students wherever I can. Mostly what's been happening this summer is at the beginning of the summer we met in studio and had some more design sessions, especially dealing with that south bank. But then since we have come out here, we've been doing a lot of work with just basically putting students on a task and saying, okay, these are the tools you're going to need. This is how you use this tool. Do it, and then give me a holler if you have any questions. And we've got several students who are slightly more experienced, and several students, most of the students are completely inexperienced. So it really works well. The student right here, Peter, is a licensed contractor. He's a grad student, and he's pretty well experienced. So we can put him on a slightly more challenging job. He can work with students and kind of keep them lined out. And basically, there's all these different tasks going on with a mixture of experience levels working on each one. But really, with a lot of construction, it's not that hard to get started. Over the years, you build up a lot of skills, how to drive a nail without bending it over and stuff like that. But someone can actually get in there and make an attempt at it without having a lot of experience in it. And that's the basic idea with this course, is to get students somewhat comfortable with this type of equipment and process, so that even if they're in a mainstream architectural practice and they just go out to visit the job site, that they're not tripping over things and not knowing what they are, not knowing what the words are for things, and able to engage in effective dialogues with the crews out on the site. So that's really one advantage, and then the other is just that when they're actually in the design studio itself, that they'll make design decisions knowing what those implications are for construction. And in some places, we had to really have the design nailed down before we basically started construction. We had to get a bunch of steel pieces ordered, like the webbing in that truss. The holes had to line up just right in the pipes and the plates and things like that. But then in other places, you don't want to have it designed down to the 1/8 of an inch. You want to leave some slop so that whatever comes out in the field, there's a place to accommodate for that and stuff like that. So this type of experience gives students a basis for an intuitive recollection of where they can leave it a little bit shy, let the builders figure it out, and where they need to actually provide authoritative information that the builders can then reference.
It would seem, maybe in my naive perspective, that anyone designing a building ought to know how to build it.
Yeah, it seems that way to me too. But
how to drive a nail, how to screw in a screw, how to pour concrete, how to lay a brick.
Right.
How could you possibly tell someone else to do something if you don't even understand to do something?
Yeah,
this seems to me
you can get into a lot of trouble that way.
A good place to give some confidence is
Yeah,
inspiring.
In fact, you really might want to talk with us. Actually, that's a really interesting subject. Apprenticeship program for to become a licensed architect, or even to become eligible to take the exam, has become increasingly structured over the past several years. There's this national council that kind of oversees it now, and basically you can only get you need 3 years apprenticeship, and you can only get 6 months of apprenticeship credit from working construction. And actually, they only give you half credit, so you would have to work a year, but you'd only get 6 months credit. So there's a real prejudice against construction experience within the architecture profession, or at least within its regulatory bodies. And that really is traced back to an effort to minimize the architect's liability. So once the architect's out on the site, he or she is that much more vulnerable to some litigation. You know, if worker falls off something while the architect's out there, it's thought that, well, the architect should have seen that there wasn't a railing over there and it was a safety problem, and the architect is therefore included in the loop of responsibility. So, but in reality, you know, traditionally all through the ages, you know, there wasn't even this title of architect, but the person that developed designs with the community in this particular participatory process was someone that had a lot of experience with construction, whether it was, you know, one of the village elders or a master builder or whoever. You know, it was not someone that was really removed from that process. And so, and really, I think we're coming full circle back around to that, but actually at a corporate level, because if you're a city and you're going to build, say, a ballpark, you know, a big thing like for a professional sports franchise, if you can get a development team that combines design and construction services, it's that much easier from your end. It can happen faster and all these kinds of things. So at the big, large-scale corporate level, design build's coming back at that stage. And then on the small level, kind of a do-it-yourself home builder or even residential development or something like that, there's local firms. Rainbow Valley Design and Construction is a good one. There's several people, entities that are moving beyond this whole conception of design being removed from what happens out on the site. And I think it was really just, you know, one of the things that came about in the 20th century, that the whole idea of architects being removed from the construction site, that is not going to be as prevalent in the future, really just because that trend, I think, could drive architects into extinction, because, you know, what people really need are things that are going to work on the site, and if the architect doesn't have a good feeling for how the design is going to be translated into reality, then it shows, and you see it in a lot of places.
That's kind of one of Chris Alexander's basic tenets, that pretty much the elimination of architect is removed entity, but architect as master builder, architect as any of his pioneering sort of work?
I think his pioneering work, or his earlier work, certainly did help to give a legitimacy to that notion, because of the value of the content of his work and the respect that it has within the academic as well as professional realms, and certainly it does, you know, explicitly call out that the people that are making it are actually, or the people that are designing it are as well making it. Like in the book to production of houses, you know, a lot of our faculty were involved in that project down in Mexicali. And you really do learn a lot from that. I mean, this is the first bridge I've ever designed or built, and you know, with this group, and we've learned so much that if we were ever to do another bridge, you know, there are quite a few little things that we would change. So you get a lot from experience, but the experience of building it is just so much more relevant, and it really just makes an impression upon you. So that when I was ordering some of these materials, I knew in the back of my mind that I needed to figure out some detail a little bit more, and that what I was ordering for some pieces weren't exactly right. But it didn't really get in my face enough to deal with it at the time, so I'm having to go back and retroactively deal with some things. Whereas if I had already built this once, and I really was aware right when I was making that initial order, I would be able to just off the top of my head pull up the information that I needed to get, you know, to get the things just right for what we needed. Because you run into little snags that you just don't anticipate if you're just drawing it out. But from the experience of building it, you can kind of see the whole process through your head, and then the design of a future project is like peeling away the layers of what's not there and revealing the system as it flows from conception into reality.
Well, you know, we were in England at the Prince of Wales Institute of Architecture. And part of his concern, and one of the reasons he started this institute, was that architects can go a full 6 or 7 years in England without ever building a single thing except little cardboard models. And then they're certified as a full-fledged architect. And his whole idea behind that is that all the students participate on design and build projects. That's the whole institute does that. Do you think this is maybe how we should approach the teaching of architecture?
Well,
a little bit more.
Architecture is it's the mother of all arts, and it encompasses lots of things. One of the things involved with that whole apprenticeship program that doesn't particularly support experience in architecture, it does involve an apprentice gaining experience in lots of other types of aspects to the practice. And I think that people that go through an architecture program and come out, whether they become architects or not, there's lots of different pathways that they can take. And it isn't necessarily the case that all architects are people who are very experienced in construction. I think that a certain amount of construction experience should be required. Even though it's not required necessarily in the apprenticeship program, to actually pass the licensing exam without having ever been out on a site, I think would be somewhat difficult. But I think the profession is such that there's places for people with different loves and different passions to contribute in the ways that they can. I mean, some people are really into working with computers in architecture. And they can do a lot of neat things with computer modeling and seeing what the sunlight's going to do during the course of the day and affecting the design that way. Really kind of dedicating themselves towards exploring that whole realm of knowledge. And then there's others who really feel a passion for construction and making things happen with their hands and stuff. So I think that it should be encouraged, and there should be opportunities for the people to do that. And I really think it draws. I think it's a natural draw. But I also think that it's not the kind of thing that necessarily needs to be forced on all people who are into art.
You know, if you look at Rudofsky's book, Architecture Without Architects, you see that for 5,000 to 6,000 years we've done just fine. We've built some incredible structures.
Right.
Everything from Ur to Siena in Italy. And none of those have a single architect involved. I mean, we have master builders, or guys like you say, Billy Gelders.
Right.
There was a big debate system that went on about what to build and how to build it. And then the actual builders seem to be the ones that shaped buildings, you know what I'm saying? In the 20th century, we have a hell of a lot of prefab stuff, particularly after World War II. And this has eliminated a lot of the skilled craftspeople that were engaged in building. You know what I mean? You see a need for revisiting that skilled craftsman
Well,
idea, or do you think that we can survive with prefab materials?
That's a tough question, because I mean the reality is that we live in a culture that lives prefabrication is a big part of what we have available to us. It's really almost our indigenous reality, and so I think we have to learn how to survive in that. But if you look back in history, the men and the women who were creating these beautiful buildings, they were architects. It's just they didn't have that name for it then, and there wasn't this rigid structure of education and apprenticeship and things like that. But
there was always apprenticeship.
Right.
True.
Right. But I think that, but yes, they did. It wasn't an architect. I mean, the architect was necessarily connected to the community and part of that community and responsible for that community, so that he or she was facilitating the wishes of the peers as opposed to this client base. And especially when you get to really successful architects now, they can feel like, well, if they don't like my designs, or they don't like this firm's designs, then they can go somewhere else. If they want me, then they're using me, and so then they're going to take what I give them, and I know what's best. So it's this real subversion of the traditional process where the architect really was less of an artist and more of a facilitator of the community's art, the art of building.
I think this goes again to the Chris Alexander idea of user groups. What do you feel about that as a participatory design process?
Yeah, it's I don't know if that's necessarily a patented Alexander idea, but the idea of user groups. Yeah, that's definitely a strategy to get at that. And in fact, he really did help really get the university going back in that mode. I've had a couple of experience with different user groups in design for the university, and it's really interesting the kinds of issues that come out of that. And Chris Alexander himself has had some recent experience with that. So it's interesting on this project, we were basically our own user group because of some issues with the university and the fact that this is the Riverfront Research Park and things like that. We basically worked with some planners and people within the university community, but there wasn't a quote official user group. But pretty much, just from our own experience out here, we were able to make that decision. In terms of your question about since World War II and the industrialization and particularly in housing, we've done a lot of work with another group, not the design build program at the architecture department, but the Center for Housing Innovation, where we designed these 6 units over on East Campus near the 18th and Agate site. And there we were looking at how to work with industrialized methods and user groups and design quality and construction realities, and to bring all these things together in a positive way. I think it is possible, but what my conclusions from that experiment were really that the more you did industrialize the process off the site, the more potential there is for some slight problems and stuff. And in some ways, there's some who look at the data and think, well, you can get a better installation in the factory, so it may be more energy efficient if it's done in the factory, perhaps, in theory. But in terms of actually making it fit together and having a design that works with the neighborhood context and things like that, and having a lot of flexibility with your design, I think that the trick is to look at how you can have participatory design, people in the community working on the design and the construction, and still access the advantages of some appropriate increases in technology. So we're looking at doing a project next year in Springfield, perhaps, a band shelter, a pretty large-scale project. It would be even more ambitious than this. And if we do that, the way we'll have to do it is have some of the roof pieces pre-manufactured in a local shop. And I'm thinking that maybe some of the students can go over and work in that shop on their table, using their nail guns and things like that, and building these big pieces. And then when we get out to the site, they'll get craned into place, so that they're, depending on the type of project, there are definitely places where some pre-assembly makes a lot of sense, or the use of a pre-manufactured component, like these glue laminated beams. I mean, we would not have been able to laminate those beams together ourselves on site and meet the structural requirements that a factory could do. And it's a great product. It allows us to use wood much more effectively, and all this, that, and the other. So it's just a real question of how to integrate those types of pre-manufactured materials within this type of design and construction process. And I think that that's where experience with construction and experience with the realities of the mainstream profession is something that is really necessary, so that these future architects and builders are drawn from a pretty wide source of tools and resources.
How important do you think this is to their education?
I don't know. Let's ask. Why don't you ask?
Well, I was going to. I want an overview.
Yeah,
and then
measuring
I go
this.
out and talk to them.
I would think it's one of the most important experiences that they will get from their degree here. I wouldn't say it's the most important. There's several different kinds of important experiences, but it may be that it's up there with anything else, just because I mean, for a lot of them that actually designed this bridge, you know, it's the first time they'll ever have something that they've ever actually seen something that they designed built. Plus, they built it themselves. Plus, it's not just a little addition to a house or a deck or something, but it's a really ambitious and complicated structure. So it's something that they'll use in their portfolio. It's something that, you know, it's interesting. The press has been out here, and I've talked a lot with different people, and in both newspaper articles, it says, you know, the quote they chose to use was that this increases their marketability or something like that. And I guess I worked that comment in that, you know, that they're looking for jobs. People would be keen to see that they've got this construction experience. But there was no one else here, and I was just kind of standing there and really feeling a lot of love for this bridge. I really can't imagine doing a design of something that I really care about a lot and then turning it over to other people to build. You know, it's like letting someone else give birth to your child. You know, it's like really where everything comes down.
On some level, that's what males get, isn't it? I mean, we birth projects.
Yeah,
so we have such
I
an
guess,
attachment to them,
I guess,
like mothers to babies.
yeah, get it where you can.
Exactly.
But yeah, when Dave led the foundry or helped with that, the first project here I helped with, I remember thinking it was one of the greatest architectural experiences in my life, and now it's just more like work, you know, but I do love it. With these students here, I'm not sure, you know, they're really into it, but you know, I really don't know what's going on in their heads. I know that they're pretty dedicated, and you know, they just look for work. I just have to create highly skilled.
Years ago, I met some
if they have a certain degree of competence in this kind of thing, that they can help their neighbor, you know, add on to their house and, you know, build a greenhouse and grow their own food, or just have some skills that actually that are actually useful. Like my girlfriend and I were working in the garden, and I was thinking about how if I had to live off of the food that came out of the garden, that I would starve. You know, it's just, you know, maybe get a salad a couple of weeks. But and I made the comment that, gee, you know, this, you know, I've got a couple of degrees and, you know, this academic stuff, and what do I really know? And then it occurred to me, well, you know, do you know how to build a bridge? That's, you know, so it really does give the students something that they that is just practical knowledge, you know, if nothing else. So whether it's working with some type of just community WPA program, or just helping their neighbors out, helping themselves out, it really helps the community at that level too. But I think really what it does is it gives more credibility to the architecture profession and to architectural education, and really at that level, I think it's where it's of particular importance. At that level, for the profession's sake, for education's sake, and then in the individual students, what they get out of it.
Well, great. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Just build a wall. Try laying bricks. You know, get a feel for it. And then they interviewed all these craftsmen, which is kind of interesting. Can you imagine that? Interviewing craftsmen. Let's see your licks. Do some of these bricks for us. So a little of this work for us. And do auditions.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, they would audition the craftspeople.
You still get some of that. There's just one stonemason in town that we worked with before. He really, you know, he was joking about this one architecture firm that's notorious for just detailing everything out, you know, drawing and dimensioning everything out, and really having not a whole lot of regard for this type of experience. But anyway, the stonemason is saying, yeah, this firm is just driving me crazy because, you know, they won't need a measure everything, you know, they're just eyeballing it.
Yeah, exactly, of course. That's how they do it for 5,000 or 6,000 years.
But
I think this is wonderful.
one of the things about this job is that I really have tried to get the students to appreciate it, not just as like this in kits of architecture design, buildings, engineering, on the side, that kind of stuff, which is really great. It's not speeding the idea, but rather to really look at it as a professional job, so that if they were to go work for contractors, that they'd be able to fit in there well and really, lead leadership type role, but that they're really thinking about it as people on a real production-oriented, quality, minded construction field.
You know what they did? Two companies opened, and he's very closely aligned with the students. So what happened was, students went out, they learned from the client what he was looking for. And then they go back, like I said, they camp on the site, they look at the other buildings, they talk with the client themselves. And they all go back to the institute under the guidance of the main architect, Christopher Morris. They get some of the best architects in the world. They designed 16 different versions of what this guy, how they interpret what this guy said. And then the guy gets to look at all these and choose one if he does. And the other one they were doing was the Earl of Cornwall. He lives in this huge estate, but couldn't afford to anymore, so he wanted to convert the barn into his new place. And so they went and lived on the Earl's estate in Cornwall for a while, and then went back and did 16 different versions of what the barn might look like. Everything from that. Yeah, and then they do one of them. And 4 or 5 of them might take a year off and just work on the project. So it's a kind of labor-intensive thing. Where they actually get the experience. Might be this student right here, Eric, what he's doing right here. Getting on the top here.
Actually, Jason over there drilling up into the bottom floor. It's kind of funky little stuff there. He's attaching this bracket.
Okay, I don't want to interfere with the work. Maybe he's done. Can you stand here and get close enough, and I can move out in there with him?
Yeah, because
I might have enough cord. I don't know.
No, that's fine actually. I do need you to do the white balance, so
But
if you could.
if we have a long shot,
Well, if you
I
could.
might be in it.
No, I think I could. Not within this deck. I think I could get you out.
The mic was out in this, right? You were
Yeah.
tight enough on him?
Yeah. So, but I mean, you just have to hold it a little further away.
Yeah, let me white balance out there. Thank you. Could you give me your name?
My name is Peter Grimm.
And you're a student here?
Yes.
Describe what the project is.
I don't know if Will told you.
Just assume you did.
All right. Well, it's a pedestrian bridge in addition to this existing car bridge.
And you're a student, and what's your position here? What do you do?
I'm building the bridge. I'm a graduate student here, and we all have equal status on the bridge, and we all just rotate in various tasks, whatever needs to be done. We kind of try to line people out in the morning, and also try to get people to hopefully get experience in things that they wouldn't normally do. For example, the landscape students don't usually pound nails and vice versa. So, I mean, ideally we want people to do a little bit of everything and get some experience in all phases of construction.
Did you help design this bridge?
No, there was actually a seminar in the spring that was they probably designed this thing 90%. The bridge itself, the engineering was all done in the spring, 99% of it. We did a little bit of a charrette at the beginning of the quarter and did the site design as a class, as a group, all of us. And some of the other decisions, I mean, the micro decisions, the exact layout of handrails and some of those issues and the dimensioning, those we did here in the studio.
So, is this a good experience for you as an architect?
No, it's great, yeah.
How do you think it would benefit you?
Well, I mean, every construction job always learn something. It's also really good to just to kind of translate lines on paper to, you know, real structure, and to understand the limitations and the opportunities of the site. You know, it's really easy to work in a vacuum in the studio, and it's easy to fall into the mindset that everything is going to work out just like you drew it. But I think that when you work on the site and you realize all of a sudden you just run into a big piece of sandstone and you've got to jackhammer it out. You either spend a week jackhammering it out or adjust the plans. You know, that's a valuable experience.
And so you work all summer? You give your time?
Yeah.
Do you get credit?
Yeah, we all get credit. It's basically just like a studio. We pay for the pleasure of building the bridge. I mean, our labor's donated. The materials are all paid for. It works out pretty good. The client in this case is the university, and I think they're pretty happy with you know, what they're getting. They're essentially getting, they're getting a lot of free labor, basically, for a project that benefits the university, and you know, everybody wins, I think, in this situation. Students, I mean, we get the experience, and the community gets the bridge. So, yeah, it's been a great experience. I would definitely recommend it, particularly for people who have had very little building experience, because I think you really learn volume on your first couple of jobs working really on the steep part of the curve. So yeah, it's pretty good.
And you've done previous projects yourself?
Yeah, I've done. I was a contractor for a couple of years actually before I went into architecture. So, but this is probably the most technical project I've ever done as far as engineering. I mostly worked residential. It's pretty straightforward. This stuff is the amount of engineering that went into this structure is pretty amazing, pretty phenomenal. But the thing is, it's like when it was, I mean, talking about it, what is required and the double joists and so on, it seems excessive. But when you build it, you realize that it's just really good building practice in general. I mean, to overbuild things. Well, I mean, it could go on and on, but you know, they just generally don't build things a lot of developers and so on these days just don't build things like they should be. They're not solid, they don't last. And yeah, this will. It's a good experience.
So the students go to that.
Yeah, the cost is incredible. That's the other thing. It always blows my mind to do it, to build something that will last. And the cost is just unbelievable. So I think it's important to find ways to save where you can and spend where you absolutely have to get the quality. Yeah. Sure.
I need to get your name in a minute. Come back. Let's blast.
I'm rolling.
Okay, would you just tell me your name so we can get a sound check?
Sure. My name's Cynthia Coogan.
Okay. And you are
I'm a graduate student here at the U of O getting a master's in architecture. I'm entering my third and last year. Pretty excited about that.
And is this your first building project?
This is my first building project that's at this scale. I've done minor projects. I worked with a graduate student last year to convert her garage into a studio apartment, but we didn't get as far along as we had hoped, so I'm seeing much more results in this one.
And what do you think is important about this experience for you?
There's a lot of things that are important. It's been a really good summer, very good experience. I wish more architects built. I'm beginning to see the reality of what we do when we design lines on paper. Lines can be very straight on paper, but when you get out on the site, lines aren't straight. There's tree roots to contend with that you didn't know about when you were drawing your drawings. I think it just makes me understand what builders go through, and I think I'll be a lot more sensitive to their needs when they tell me we really can't do what you wanted to do. Instead of just resisting that, I think I'll be more inclined to say, okay, how can we do it then? You know, and let's make it work for both of us instead of just my way, your way. I think also it helps to inform my design. You see the layers that have to happen, and you realize there's an order to the layering, and you have to make it, you know, design it in a way that can be built. I mean, it sounds so basic, but we really don't think, and I haven't thought in those terms in school enough. Never enough.
Do you think maybe that this kind of program should be expanded as a concept within the architecture departments of all the universities, or you know, as a general curriculum?
Yeah, I think it's really good. I know that some people, for whatever reason, they're just not interested in doing this, and I respect that. I mean, not everyone will be doing work where they need to be, you know, doing this kind of detail or have this kind of understanding. There are some people that are much stronger in media, some people that are much stronger in computer design. The kind of work that I want to be doing, I want to be much more involved with the building aspect. And something that's helped me learn was just how a design-build firm would work, to have a better idea. And I really would like to be in a firm that's a little more vertically integrated so that you are incorporating the building aspect of the project within the firm. Everybody feels they're part of the project. And yeah, I would like to see it really promoted. This summer in particular, I don't know if it was the first time, but they had more people apply than they had positions. So it is becoming a little bit more competitive to get in, and I think that shows the increased interest. For whatever reason, either people think it's a great way to spend the summer, or they realize, yeah, it really will help. It's something not only good to have on my resume, but good to have in my brain. So I would love to see it happen in other schools. I would love to see as many people here that want to take it be able to take it. I don't think anyone should not be able to take it because we didn't have enough positions. Because sometimes there's only one summer during your program that you're able to do this. So some people lost out.
Do you think that this might be something that should be mandatory maybe before, you know, before one would graduate, that you would build a few real projects?
That's a hard one, David. There are a lot of requirements here, and a lot of people coming into the program I'm in are older students with a lot of demands on their time, and they're really trying to juggle it all. So I question the mandatoriness. I think people need to know why this is a good thing. And like I said, not everyone's into it. I think some people would be intimidated by this kind of work, not comfortable with this kind of work, and I respect that.
But if you're telling other people how to build something,
right,
you don't yourself understand it. Maybe I'm missing something here, but it seems to me like the most fundamental step to understand how to build something, if you're trying to tell someone else to do that. I mean, a teacher couldn't be a teacher without understanding first how to... And
yes.
An architect is a teacher to the contractor in some ways, I mean.
Well, that I would question. I think, yes, it is fundamental to building to understand how it builds. And I think the more informed designs are with respect to lots of issues, not just the building issue, with environmental issues, with traffic flow, with structural issues, landscape architecture issues, interior architecture issues. The more we can speak the languages of those people, the better the design will be overall, and the more fun the project will be as well. So I really don't... I hope to not work in a way that's a struggle. But I personally, maybe it's because I'm still a student, I don't see myself telling the builder how to do his or her job. I would love to offer suggestions and say, you know, in this last project I did, we saw it done this way and we saved wood by doing that. You know, we didn't triple the top plate, we just doubled it and it worked fine. To be able to be informed like that would be great. But I really feel that, you know, the builder is an expert in the building, and my strength will be in the design. And the more we know about each other's work, great. But I don't expect to be an expert builder and to tell a builder how to do it.
Well, when I look at the current designs for, let's say, an apartment building, oftentimes there's 17 pages of them.
Right, with the
and
working
some of them
drawings.
actually tell how to work, how
Right.
to lay it out, how to build it, how to, what kind of joists it's called. In that sense, I'm saying, aren't you as an architect responsible for each of those 17 pages somehow?
Yeah, right. But when you get down to the very specifics, if someone says, well, I can't put this fascia board up here because of this rafter or whatever, and they have another way of doing it, if it doesn't affect my aesthetic purpose or the way I'm creating, a dry surface, trying to close up the building envelope, so to speak, then I guess I just feel it would be egotistical for me to not defer to someone else's judgment when I feel that judgment's better, and I'm okay with that. I mean, that's one of the reasons I picked this profession. I expect to be learning for the rest of my life, so I definitely don't want to be a novice, but yeah, I like to learn, so that's okay.
Well, let me get into the sticky area of Christopher Alexander. Now, some of this design work, of course, I understand that part of being a design-build thing is that you will use a process that will be, let's say, user group oriented, where you would get the client involved in right up front. Now, this is part of Chris's idea. And, how do you feel that worked on, let's say, this project?
I wasn't in the spring seminar, and that's when a lot of the talking with the client occurred. So probably, others could speak to that issue a little better.
But how do you feel about the user group concept?
I like that a lot. That's, I would say that corresponds to my background, the things I've done. Just the more communication, the better for everyone. I think people have a hard time with surprises, and especially with design. When something is finished, they want to feel like they were expecting it to look that way. And you, as an architect, really wouldn't want to have something be finished and have the clients say, no, that's not what I had in mind, and that's not going to work, I don't like it, whatever. I mean, that wouldn't be a success in my mind. So the more the user group's involved, I think also the user group has a different perspective on it than the architect, and that's fine. I mean, the more perspectives, the better. I know just with other projects I've heard about where the clients were very involved, they think they're the people using it every day, and they just have ideas that you just can't glean from a book, or so I think it's more informed. The more informed the project is, the better. It's just that it sometimes takes more time, and there's a lot of wrangling and compromise and going back and forth, but that's just part of it.
Well, one of the men that we've interviewed and was an old student of Christopher Alexander, Dave Edrington, who's a local architect here, uses the pattern language to give his clients a vocabulary in which to discuss the project. Are you familiar with the pattern language? And
yes, I am. I've actually, the time that I became most familiar with it was when I was working in a studio taught by Edrington's partner, Rob Fallon. And we were working on a studio entitled Environmentally Responsible House, and we were given specific patterns to look up depending on where we were in the project and what we were to look at. And that was the first time I really used it and used it in that manner, and it was great. It was amazing what it made you think of in a very basic way at a very crucial time of the design when you really needed to be thinking about those basics, but sometimes they get lost. So I did like it, and I felt that it was. I think it'd be good for the layperson to try to understand what the architects are thinking about, and it's not just doodles on a page to look pretty, and we're really thinking about creating space in a way that will be enjoyed by people, as well as be functional and be watertight if that's what it's supposed to be, and serve all of its purposes, but above all, be an enjoyable space.
And you think the pattern language helps a client to understand it?
Yeah. They have, little pictures too that just sum up the different points, and it's very, very well organized. So even if they're not into reading the 4 pages, they can just read that bold print, get the gist of it, and if they're already overloaded, fine. They got the basics.
So for you as an individual, what does this project serve? It's working this year.
Well, that's kind of personal. But to be really honest, One of the reasons I wanted to do this is I feel it's hard for women to get construction experience without being in a somewhat intimidating environment, and this was a very non-threatening, safe environment in which to be a novice, in which to learn, in which to ask questions that you knew a week later you yourself would consider stupid, but you know, when you're ignorant you got to ask. It's the only way to learn, and people have just been great about sharing knowledge, and so for me it was a summer to become self-empowered and feel really good, and I just feel more secure about the whole profession. Just that I feel like I can go onto a job site and I can talk to these people, and you know, if they're running behind, maybe I'll bring my tool belt and join them on Saturday to catch up and get on schedule or something. So it's had a lot to do with self-empowerment and self-confidence, and that's wonderful.
Do you think it would serve that for everyone in some way?
You know, I don't really know. I haven't talked to too many people, but I know in general the women feel that way, that it's just been a great opportunity to get some construction experience, and I don't know, I just know that's where I am, that it's been a really good boost, and I'm like fired up for the last year, and it's worked out really well, just feeling good about where I am.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Sure, you're welcome. Thank you.
And Sid, you continue to impress me.
And Chris oversaw the whole process. And it's like the lead up. Now it's almost built. Yeah, we had a, we do a lot of things, and they were really enthused with the school. It was an opportunity to work with some of the best architects I met in the world.
But they were really hyped. I mean, they just were very, they wanted to get out there.
And they were building all these projects all around the institute, walls, types of structures, different kinds of
Yeah,
very,
sample stuff.
Very pragmatic, hands-on. Well, the Prince of Wales, actually, that was one of the big complaints about Coogan. We graduated 7 years of school and never built a goddamn thing. And then it makes them very, very insecure. You hit the nail right on the head when they're insecure, like Robert Ventura. Yeah, well, you've never built anything. Oh, of course, it would be. I think all of us did. You know, if you don't want to do something, okay, let me know. When you really don't know, you yourself.
Well, especially, we want students who are more, or people who are going out in the world to be more sensitive to environmental issues and people and all this sort of stuff.
Can you imagine being an insensitive architect? It's like an oxymoron.
But that's what it is.
I know.
They may start up, even if the students, even with a good training, we get into an office, they don't, they get into an office and they get pounded on by senior people and they're so insecure that they lose all their idealism, they lose any sensitivity they have.
I've had that for 2 years here, and that's why this summer was good. I'm in a strong position now to go into my third year because you do this. All you're doing is letting it down.
Go out to the street and get them from the side of that bridge.
Soon to see what's going on.
Hey, you got sandbags.
La dejamos ahí nomás.
Oh, media thing. He's very unsatisfied with the age.
Ahora, hacia aquí la volteamos una vez, la traemos más aquí y otra vez la
Well, all the things are really
Millrace Drive, I think.
What are you trying to find?
Están queriendo caer atrás y esto me lo está levantando.
Oh, dynamics? It's the next one down. Go down to the intersection of the lights, take a left.
I think you went the Riverfront Research Drive.
Yeah.
We're going to have a real hard time with this mixed light again, I think. Unless we get right down in there.
I'm okay. It's actually giving me little signals when it's getting red.
Well, what happens is you get this,
I know.
it does this whole transition. And if you can, get in there and it can, it can boost itself back, then you'll just get it.
Let's see what I can do.
But if we set out there, you could actually probably get some of the students working on the
hill.
The hill there.
I got some of her from a distance, which is pretty good.
Yeah, you can kind of tighten up on that.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, you're doing okay.
But I kind of want something. Come over here.
time when they were spread out like this.
They were together back then.
Were they clans? They were together. See, this is like... Those two are ready to drill. Drill those two.
I think that's nice to get up there.
Bring the watches flush.
Attached to the bridge so that there aren't the big openings between the diagonals. Just for
So you'll
safety
see that.
purposes.
I just wanted to. I think there's a good shot. They're working down right under the bridge, right under this hole, and I just thought if I could shoot down into the hole, it would be really cute. A good action shot. But I just, because from what I got under the bridge was, you know, I mean, they're see this much of them, and then they go like this. And it's just a little frustrating. Okay, I got plenty of this. It's a nice shot.
Toddle know what it's about. It's just a piano for
Which? Tripod competition.
I'd like to do a pan. The students over here over to the ones working
From where to where?
right over here, across the pond, which would be nice, and then come up on the
Zoom in.
walkway here. I have to zoom, that's too complicated. Just a pan.
Zoom in on them. Oh. Zoom in on them. I mean, that is keep it
Just
zoomed
pan.
in.
Just start off a medium shot of them, and then just pan across.
See what I can do.
And practice it. Come up where you're. right like that.
Okay, good.
Greg, overkill. This is a little teeny slice.
Yeah, I know, but I might want to use it for something else. Some other time. I mean, that's always all of this stuff. Always the reason why we're always overshooting is in case this is, you know, and I generally wouldn't want to use the same footage that we'll use in the film. So because it's repetitive. I mean, you know, you want to keep it original. And so I always try to give us, you know.
It's still running.
Oh, there are people moving in the shot. Well, the only other thing that I felt was a priority today was anything at Amazon before it disappears.
Exactly, that's what I was thinking too. That's the only thing I want to have in mind today. So it's good we're in accord then.
What time is it?
I'm sure it's past 1 o'clock.
No.
I'll scope out the time.
Really? Is that late? Okay.